Morning, you curious cats. Another beautiful sunrise here on the farm. A lot of uncertainty in the air for a lot of people these days. I think a lot of us are experiencing tremendous change and wondering what our next direction is. It's those of us that are willing to adapt quickly and to process all of the new information and act accordingly that are going to thrive moving forward. It's those that hold on to the old ways and cling on to the past that are going to have a harder time adapting to the new world. Things have changed dramatically just in the last few months here with COVID and with the economy. And there's a lot of people that are stuck holding on to the past. And there's also a whole group of people that are already making changes and planning accordingly. And if you're one of those ones that are taking all of this new information without overloading yourself and looking at the future and how things are going to play out to the best of your ability and then adapting and acting accordingly, that's how I believe we're going to thrive moving forward. So it's a great time to be really looking at these things, looking at our own lives, looking at our businesses, looking at our spending habits, looking at our health, looking at our communities, looking at the people that are in our lives, and really asking ourselves if all that's serving us and if all that's coming from a place of truth and of higher perspective, and is that our highest purpose? Are we acting from a place of our highest purpose? So very few are actually looking at truth these days. There's so much misinformation, and I feel that the masses are so lost that in general, not too many people are looking at things truthfully. And truth is actually pretty obscure these days because people are so lost. They've been fed so many lies from the mainstream media, from the governments, from all these powers that be. So when somebody actually is speaking truth or is in their truth, they are ostracized because it seems so far from reality, because the masses are so lost and have been fed so many lies that the truth actually seems to be the obscure, far-fetched conspiracy theory kind of perspective or narrative. However, I think moving forward, more and more truth is going to leak out with the internet and all these alternative platforms. They're really having a hard time controlling the information as much as they did in the past. And so what they do is, because they can't control it, they just flood the internet and the airwaves with misinformation. So for every bit of truth that leaks out, they just put a counter article saying, oh no, that's been disproven. That's not true. So now there's so much misinformation that people can't actually distinguish truth from fiction. And we're going through tremendous change. There's all kinds of stuff that is happening right now, and I've seen this coming for some time. I've been trying to warn people about it, and no one really wanted to look at it. No one wanted to look at the fact that we were completely over leveraged on debt. And no one wanted to look at the fact that no one had any savings. No one wanted to look at the fact that we were living in a fairy tale land where anything was possible. Live your dreams, take out debt, start that company of your dreams, do whatever you want, live for yourself, all these things. I call it the microwave generation, this newer generation, where we grew up, a lot of us, with microwaves, and it was just a matter of pushing time cook on a few buttons and your meal was ready. There was no prepping it, sitting around waiting for it to cook. It was just pop it in, push some buttons, and it was ready in a minute. And no one's willing to wait for anything anymore. No one's willing to have patience, to work hard, to save. They just want everything right now, and they think they deserve it all right now. Well, that mentality is what creates fragility, and this is what has led to record high debt levels, because everyone's overextended. Everyone borrowed all this money to go to university because they figured they deserved the desk job. They wanted the dream job. They didn't want to have to work hard. They wanted to sit in an office and do research or be a professor. Well, we only have so many spots for that. We also need people on the ground. We need farmers. We need tradesmen. We need people that work hard. And I find that less and less people were willing to do that, and people were led to believe they could lead these dreamy lives and do anything they wanted. And so they kept taking out debt because that was easier, to just take out more debt and go back to school. And they could tell everyone, oh, I'm a student, I'm doing something, I'm getting smart, and they feel smart and they feel great. But are you actually applying that knowledge? That's what I wonder. Sure, you can be book smart, you can have all these degrees, but are you able to actually take that knowledge and apply it and generate income and radical self-reliance with that? Or are you just a lifelong student who just continually pulls out more debt? And people pulled out all this debt because they wanted these dream homes. They figure that every kid needs a bedroom, they needed 5,000 square feet, they needed motorhome, the boat, the 4 cars. All the kids need brand new name brand clothes. They need to take trips every year. And now what? Now this has happened and no one has savings and everyone's looking to the government for bailouts. Well, that doesn't create much radical self-reliance for you and your family, does it? And they've been punishing the savers. They punish the savers through inflation. You were able to put away 100 grand. In 11 years in Canada here, that 100 grand lost 65% at a minimum of its purchasing power. So even if you were saving, you were being punished. And they rewarded the borrowers with cheap interest and these luxurious lives they were able to live. If you were willing to take out debt and buy into their Ponzi scheme, they rewarded you with beautiful homes and new cars and fancy clothes. And it was really easy. You didn't have to work hard for it. You just went and signed on the dotted line and you were given all this money. So this is Keynesian economics, where they just push more and more debt money, and that's the only thing we have to keep things going. More debt, more inflation, perpetual growth. The insanity continues. Austrian economics believes in saving money and having hard money and working hard, or producing stuff of value to create wealth and to actually save it and grow your wealth, to create anti-fragility and resilience, so that when stuff like this happens, you have money in the bank, you have resources to get you through. And they don't believe in continual money printing and devaluation of the dollars, creating more and more enslavement of the middle class. So I hope and I believe that moving forward, we will be changing our view, because we're going to experience the pitfalls of this Keynesian madness, where they just continually print more money out of thin air and buy up all the hard assets and devalue the dollars. Like I've said in other videos, I've really simplified it for people. Every time they double the money supply, the purchasing power of those dollars get cut in half. So yes, they are able to temporarily prop these markets up with the money printing. They print it, they buy the stock market with it, so the stock market doesn't crash. They print the money, they buy some homes, keeps the real estate market floating. They print the money, they give it out in bailouts, they give it out in handouts to the people now. Keeps everyone going. Yeah, people would have already been bankrupt, but they printed money and they started giving everyone checks in the mail for free. You don't even have to do anything. Free money. Sounds great, right? All of this money printing that they have done is going to create massive inflation eventually. We don't know when. The first thing that happens is deflation. And deflation can last 5, 10, 20 years. We've seen it in Japan. Their deflationary period has been over 20 years now. Even with government money printing and purchasing of assets, it wasn't enough to keep the markets afloat. They went into a deflationary spiral, the worst thing in Keynesian economics. There's nothing they can do about deflation. They will continue to print more and more money, trying to get inflation to happen and growth to happen and spending to return. And they'll print and they'll print and they'll print. And everyone's nervous, so they keep hoarding the cash. They'll take the checks. Who doesn't take free money? We all take free money. And we put it under our mattress. The smart ones buy gold. They buy silver. They buy Bitcoin. They get the wealth out of the devaluing currencies. And the governments continue to print and they continue to hand out the free money. And people continue to hoard it. And that becomes stored energy. The energy builds and builds and builds as they continue to try and stimulate the stock market. And eventually, all of the commercial, wholesale, everyone trying to sell stuff, and there's no buyers, so they continue to drop the price, trying to find buyers, and the prices go down and down and down as the wholesalers sit on merchandise and get desperate. They have bills to pay, they need to move it, so they start to drop prices. This is what is called a deflationary spiral. And that's what we're going to see in the next year or two, in my opinion. Asset prices will be coming down because there's not going to be any buyers. People are going to realize they don't need to buy all this junk, that when it really comes down to it, they just need money for their family, for food, for shelter, for the basics. So as prices get cheaper, trying to find buyers, it goes cheaper and cheaper, and people wait and wait. And eventually prices reach a point where people say, okay, I'm willing to buy at that. Prices are now half of what they used to cost. Sure, I'll buy. So now all of this money that's been created over this period by governments trying to get people to spend again, trying to stimulate the economy, keep the bubble going, keep this Ponzi scheme going, all of that stored energy from the money they created eventually comes flooding in, and prices start to rise really quick. And that is when you experience true hyperinflation. And that's what happened over the last 10 years. Canada, we've seen it a lot. Home prices in a lot of places, I think they 4x'd in 11 years, something like that. 3x'd at least. So that wasn't that property prices were going up. That was inflation. That was devaluation of the currency. So it took 3 or 4 times more of that same currency to buy that underlying asset. So that's what happened since the 2008 crash and all the money printing that they did there. And that's why prices got so expensive in some of these countries. And you just wait. The amount of money they're printing for this current economic crisis, it's insane. I just read that the Canadian government has tripled their balance sheet since the crisis. That is eventually going to come into the market in the form of massive inflation. If you think prices are expensive now, just wait if this inflation comes in. Probably the best thing that could happen is deflation for an extended period of time. That's probably the best thing we can hope for. Or a complete reset of the currency. Say something like Bitcoin taking out the world reserve currency, taking out the US dollar and a new system coming into play, or some new gold-backed digital currency. I think that's what's going to happen. The new currency will be digital, and it's probably going to be controlled by the same banking cartel, the same elite families, but I remain hopeful. I hope that free market can actually prevail and that we can find a way to get the monetary system out of their grips, but I'm also doubtful. But I like to stay positive and hope for the best. I find something like Bitcoin is actually a far superior money because of its decentralized nature and some of the aspects and properties that it has. But these powers that be have so much power that I'm also doubtful. So we shall see moving forward. But it's a critical time to pay attention. It's a critical time to learn about finance, to learn about money, to find ways to shelter you and your family and your loved ones from what is coming. This is going to be a very difficult time. The numbers have just come out here in Canada, and unemployment has now far surpassed the levels of the Great Depression. And yet real estate hasn't budged. People are still buying for the prices they were pre-pandemic. So where do they think the money's going to come from? If no one can work, all of the boomers that have all the wealth are now retiring and downsizing and limiting their spending, and the Chinese are pulling out and selling foreign investment. Where's the money going to come from to keep these house prices going? The currency is devaluing. Everything's up in the air. I just don't see it. I think we're going to have deflation. I think the currencies are in major trouble. We're going to have a major currency crisis. So if you're only holding these government currencies, you could be in serious trouble because they're going to continue to lose value. They actually may hold value for a bit while we go into deflation and people rush to cash, but we shall see. I think diversity is key. It's important to be diversified because everything in these environments are risky. So by having a little bit of a bunch of different things, then you're somewhat sheltered. So those are my thoughts. It's a crazy time. I hope all of you are doing what you can to get diversified, to learn about the economy, to learn about money, and protect your assets, protect your wealth in these crazy times so that we can all prosper and create anti-fragility in our lives. So those are my thoughts for this morning. I'm going to leave it at that, and I hope you guys all have a wonderful day.